Hello there ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to get this video out for a long time, but I wanted to make sure that I got plenty of experience playing through everything Resident Evil 2 has to offer, so I can give a very realistic opinion and just tell you guys, was it actually worth all of the wait, and was it worth all of the hype? So we're going to be going through a lot of different topics here related to Resident Evil 2, and I do just want to say right now, I can't be reviewing the full game and the full experience because we still have the Ghost Survivors DLC that looks to be an Extreme Battles replacement, and until that is in the game, considering it is free so everybody has access to it, I will be re-reviewing the game after that, and so this is just my impressions of Resident Evil 2 on release. Now strangely, to review Resident Evil 2, we're going to have to look at Resident Evil's history as a whole. Now, Resident Evil in its oldest and earliest iterations had a very dramatic and intense story and plotline. Plenty of gore and drama was provided within them, and on top of this, it's not to say that there weren't cheesy moments, and comic relief was definitely a part of the game and a huge part of its charm. Another large part of the charm of the early Resident Evils was the extremely extravagant and elaborate puzzles that to most people in their memory probably had them going through a walkthrough to have to actually solve. Now somewhere along the line of Resident Evil 4 and 5, a lot of these elements were toned down, casualified, and the game was turned from its survival horror roots more into an action piece. We were going around as Leon, drop-kicking zombies, grappling hooking around as Ada, punching boulders as Chris, and everything went a little bit over the top in a similar fashion to how Saints Row 1 was a very realistic game, and then Saints Row 4 is just, yeah. A similar thing did happen to Resident Evil. Now the writing and cinematography has taken a much more realistic turn back in Resident Evil 2. The introductory pieces to the game feel very immersive, and you are very much drawn into the feeling of an absolutely isolated environment in the middle of nowhere. This is what Raccoon City is supposed to be, so the game developers got this down extremely well. Now Resident Evil 2 does start off with a high amount of tension as well. This game is one of those horror games that goes from 0 to 100 and never really lets down on the pacing either. More enemies are going to get thrown at you and everything's going to become more complicated overall. This isn't a game where you're going to be power creeping and by the end of the game everything is a joke. It's going to be quite the opposite. A large reason for this, in my opinion, is not just due to the slowed down movement speed and all of the other systems from Resident Evil 7, where they took a step back from being an action-paced, Matrix-level superhero game, and now we have a very limited amount of guns and no CQC. I think the very limited amount of guns that we have access to, and none of them have extremely high levels of power, and I'm discounting of course unlockable endgame weapons such as the rocket launcher, but other than that, most of the weapons that are thrown your way have generic power or just have very limited ammunition and thus have to be used very carefully. The item management system in this essence has come back full swing, and mixed with the puzzle pieces and key items, of which you need quite a few at certain points in the game, really makes you feel tense more than just the enemies, but also having to manage your healing items, how much ammo you want to spare, as well as keeping all the key items in your inventory to progress through to the next areas. Everything's just blended together absolutely smoothly. So for original Resident Evil 2 fans, this is a very authentic experience and pretty much exactly what we were asking for. There's still a few complaints from the fans, such as the lack of a fixed camera angle mode even as an extra, but I do think the development has come along incredibly well, and what we have got here is just absolutely impeccable. And looking at some of the cinematics in the game and the level of dialogue and writing differences, you can really see Capcom's taken in a lot of feedback this time around, and they are trying to go for a more modernized and realistic story. They're trying to add a lot more character growth and development to the game, And some of the great examples include changes to Ada and Leon's campaign, or even Annette as a character and how she interacts with Claire and Leon this time around. I'm not gonna lie, the scene that she had with Sherry at the end of the game was one of the most emotionally impacting moments I've actually ever seen in a Resident Evil, or even in one of these types of games altogether.
Hey.
I knew you'd make it. My mom needs help.
Annette? Sherry? How are you?
Okay. But you don't look so good. Mommy?
Hey, look at the screen. Oh, thank God. So Sherry's gonna be all right? She'll be weak for a little while, but yes. She's free of the G virus. Did you hear that?
What happened to her?
She was attacked by the monsters. Don't worry about me. Take my daughter to safety. I'm sorry, Sherry. For everything. Your life is what is important.
We can't just leave her here.
You're right, we can't.
Honestly, these are the moments we live for in video gaming. The moments like Metal Gear Solid, when we have to take down Sniper Wolf. These are the moments that are absolutely traumatic and do affect a lot of people more than you'll ever imagine. It also adds a level of moral redemption for Annette this time around in Claire's campaign, showing at her last moments on death's door that she did start to care about Sherry, and you can see in those final moments the regret of a mother who just loved her daughter. And I was thinking she probably was reimagining her marriage with William Birkin at this point, her being a part of Umbrella, and probably thought she should have just taken off with Sherry and tried to go off the grid. She regretted all of her choices, and these are great and welcoming changes. As well as the character modifications to all of this game, it's really added a unique spin to say Annette Birkin's character, and this is one of the best highlights and examples of the changes done to the lore. Now, I really do hope Capcom keeps this direction in storytelling, drama, pacing, tension, and immersion with all future titles. If you guys didn't hear, they were talking about Resident Evil 3, and I'm going off topic for just a second here, but if they do remake it, which I think it's pretty clear that's already happening and that's just to see fan reactions, but when they do remake it, I hope they do keep this exact same feeling mechanically and cinematically for all of the game, because it will be a beautiful experience if replicated properly. Now, there's some things I do want to say though, is that for example the Leon A and Claire A ending do not exactly meet up or match up anymore in the lore. There's a little bit of confusion what's the canon there. There's also the fact that the A-B scenarios were removed. We get second run, but it's more of a madhouse mode this time around, to be honest. But we do get Hunk as well as Tofu, and there's a lot of extra Tofus this time around, so you'll have some positive fun playing around with those. It's just a little bit of extra fun game modes. There's not as much as in the original game, but like I said, with the free Ghost Survivors DLC looking like it's basically a proxy Extreme Battles game mode, we're gonna have to see how that fares out. and remember there will be 3 characters, so there must be a unique spin to that as well, and what exactly that changes. But overall, we've got to look back. This game was asked from the old fans. Now Capcom did a really good compromise, making a game that merges the old elements that made Resident Evil 1, 2 and 3 so good in the first place, but also making it so that newcomers to the series can also have a really good experience as well. Changes such as the camera angles, things like that are definitely a positive direction for Capcom to take their future titles. There's been a hell of a lot of a positive reception, by the way, about Resident Evil 2 online. It's pretty much just getting massively globally positive reviews all over the place, and considering how much of a different direction Capcom's taken, and they've gone balls to the walls with absolutely every facet of development here, it's no wonder why they're getting such good reviews, and I'm definitely thinking now this is a good contender for Game of the Year. I also want to talk about the environments really quickly here, and I've got a scene up just to show one of the most beautiful in the game that just shows how expansive and large the environments the RE engine can pull off, because Resident Evil 7 didn't really show that, and Resident Evil 2 gave everybody a little bit of a taste. Now, every single environment I came across in the game was extremely highly polished and well detailed. The artist team have to be given a lot of credit for this. The game's an absolutely beautiful masterpiece when it comes to graphical aesthetic fidelity. I just love these kinds of underground environments that just seem to go on forever and ever and have endless pits, almost like you could fit an entire city in them. Now, talking about some of the cut content, just to be fair, such as the spiders, including modifications to previous enemies as well, such as the ivy creatures you encounter, which should be familiar to players of the original game, but this time around they look a little bit different. I don't exactly believe Capcom when they say the entire reason for these modifications, as well as removing some of the other monsters, is due to the fact they couldn't make them look realistic enough, when they have made the giant alligator look extremely authentic. The Ivy modified creatures also look extremely real, but I think the worst offenders are the G creatures, because they just look absolutely ridiculous, and of course a spider is much easier to do. I don't even think you need to be a developer to understand that one and agree with it. And on top of that, we also have the final form of Mr. X, as well as Birkin, which are also completely out of there. So I do think some spiders, as well as moths and other things, would have been pretty easy to put into the game. It's up to anyone's guess what Capcom's real reason for that was, but I personally do think it was due to time constraints. It's a little bit unfortunate, and I would have liked to have seen how Capcom would have handled those enemies' AIs and to have seen them in the game. It would have definitely been creepy for players as well, and they could have been utilized in all sorts of unique ways. Just overall, I do think Resident Evil 2 is the direction Capcom needed to take Resident Evil overall. There's been a lot of debates about what makes a Resident Evil game what it is and what makes them so good, but I think everybody can agree after playing Resident Evil 2 that this is a good compromise between both player bases and provides one hell of an interesting experience. If you did enjoy the video, please do leave a share, a like, or a subscribe. There'll be plenty more content coming out soon for you guys. And also, I do have a link to a Patreon if you want to go the extra mile in the description below. I just hope you're having a beautiful day. As always, take it easy and peace.